discussions on topics affecting Hawaii's youth, ohana, and community.
Aloha mai kako! Welcome to another episode of Hale Kipa's Kukakuka. My name is Venus Rossetti Medeiros, and I am the president and CEO of Hale Kipa. And today we have another very exciting talk story with our trauma-informed experts here in Hawaii. So today we are going to be talking about trauma-informed care in Hawaii, especially as it relates to our young people and their families. So with me today, I have Hale Aquaro, and Hale is our acting administrator for Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division, and they are under the Department of Health. So say aloha, Hale.
Aloha, thank you so much for having me.
All right, mahalo for being here. We also have Dr. Scott Shimabukuro, who is, well, very well known here in Hawaii when it comes to trauma-informed care, but he is representing tonight our Hawaii Trauma-Informed Care Task Force. Yes, for the state of Hawaii. And Scott is our chair. And we also, Scott, you want to say hello?
Aloha.
And we also have Tia Hartzog, who is our executive director of the Office of Wellness and Resiliency here in Hawaii under the office of our governor, which is a new department, and we're so excited to have it. So I'm going to start off with Hale. So Hale, can you kind of share with our community, like, who is and what is CAMHD? That's short for Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division. Share with us, like, what is it, your primary goal?
Sure. So as you mentioned before, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division is a part of the Hawaii State Department of Health, and we serve our community mostly through family guidance centers. So we have 7 family guidance centers throughout the state. We have 3 on Oahu, and then we have 2 on the Big Island, 1 on Maui that serves Maui County, and 1 on Kauai. And really our goal is to make sure that kids have access to really high quality mental health services. We, out of the Family Guidance Center, we have a huge network of providers who take care of our keiki every day.
Hale Kipa is one.
Hale Kipa is one. And so through this network, we're able to provide intensive mental health services to children and adolescents who need it the most.
So when you say intensive mental health, right, what does that mean?
Right. So we serve the kids who have the most significant emotional and behavioral challenges. So in addition to having a mental health diagnosis, they're also showing signs that that diagnosis, that mental health problem, is really significantly impairing their functioning in a day-to-day way at school or in the community or in the home. And so really we're serving those kids who have the most significant emotional behavioral health challenges.
So how do you know, Hale? Like, how do you know? Like, where do you get your referrals from? How do they have access to your services?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, because really anyone can make a referral to the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division, or can submit an application to see if a child is eligible for our services on our website. There is a place to apply, and depending on where you live, that application will go to the Family Guidance Center nearest you. A lot of times schools will notice a behavioral problem, and so sometimes they'll talk to the parents about our services. You know, our services are free, they're voluntary, and so parents can apply their kids themselves. Or sometimes if the schools notice that the behavioral health challenges are getting in the way of the child's ability to benefit from their education, if they have an individualized educational plan, and mental health services are part of that. Sometimes they'll make the referral too, but they always talk to the parents first because, of course, we're not going to screen any child for eligibility without parents' permission. But really, we're primarily, most of the kids that we serve because we're a MedQuest behavioral health carve-out plan. And so kids who have Quest insurance would be eligible for our services through that carve-out plan if they meet our eligibility criteria.
Okay, so if I have like HMSA or Kaiser, am I ineligible?
It depends. So if you need our services to benefit from your education through your individualized educational plan, you could still be eligible even though you have commercial insurance. Or sometimes we're able to get grants or special programs that offer ways for services to be funded besides through Quest, MedQuest division. So it's always a good idea to apply because sometimes there are those opportunities, but primarily over 90% of the kids we serve, it's because they have MedQuest.
Oh, okay, well that's good to know. Now, how long does it normally last, like the services provided? Is there a cutoff?
No, not at all. And it really depends on what a child needs, right? So at a point that a child is found eligible for our services, very first thing they get is a care coordinator. And that person is so important. That's like the hub of everything that they're going to be receiving through our care. So that person is going to be helping explain to the family how to navigate our system. They're also going to be partnered with a clinician who's going to talk to the family about what we found during our assessment, what our recommendations for care are, talk stories with the family, see, what they can do, what they want to participate in, what they feel like would be helpful for their child, have a discussion about that, come up with a treatment plan. And then from there, the care coordinator will make referrals to the services that the team agreed to. And so for some kids, maybe it's 6 months of care. For others, maybe it's longer, and it really depends on the needs of every child and adolescent. But I would say something that we know across the board really impacts young person's ability to be successful is the help that they get from their ohana, participating in those services, supporting them through the services, reinforcing those things at home. It's so important.
Great, I agree with you. So families can be part of this counseling and
absolutely. Yeah, they have to be. Of course, we know no keiki is just in a vacuum, right? I mean, and so the more support that they can get from school, community, ohana, the easier it'll be for them to make gains and really get the most out of their treatment.
Right. So that's great to know. So people who have, like, for instance, I have 6 kids of my own, right? So I have a child and they're, I have some concerns that there might be some depression or sadness, like overly sad, and I can actually go online to your website and I can request or fill out an application, and someone would get back to me?
Yes. Yeah. What would happen is, after you submit your application, you'll get a phone call from the Family Guidance Center, and they'll just be asking questions about what you're seeing, what you're worried about, maybe how long it's been going on, and they'll also ask if your child has seen a mental health professional before, or if they've ever been assessed by a mental health professional before. And if they have, then that's clinical information that will help us decide, if we can be helpful and how we can be helpful. And if not, then that's something that we'll schedule right there. Schedule a time for you to meet with one of our clinicians and have that mental health assessment done.
That's great. I mean, community, we need to know this, that there's resources for our keiki out there and our families. So mahalo, Hale. I have one more question for you, and then we'll get into just kind of like bouncing off each other. Culture is a huge thing, right, here in Hawaii. The way that we approach our young people when it comes to counseling mental health services. I mean, do our counselors or therapists, are they like culturally informed? Are they, like, do you have that as part of, I would say, a prerequisite for them to be working with our local kids? Is that part of it?
Well, I think not necessarily a prerequisite, but I think something that we know is really important for people who are accessing care is that representation, right? And so to the extent that we can, we want our care coordinators, our therapists, our clinicians, we want the people that are working with you to be familiar community faces for you, right? And so, yeah, that's hugely important,
right,
because it's one thing to make the service available. It's really another thing to make it acceptable and feel like something you want to participate in, something that feels supportive and something that you feel like is going to have a meaningful impact.
Great. So if someone was working with my child that I didn't feel comfortable with, or my child, we should have a discussion about that. Okay. Yeah, it's so important. And actually, there's been a lot of research done on that relationship, right, between therapists and it's so important, so important. And actually, if I can make another plug, there's a great website called helpyourkeiki.com, and it's a great resource for parents if they're wondering about behaviors, if they have questions about what therapy is about or what things are helpful. It's just a great resource for families. So I love that. Helpyourkeiki.com, okay? Scott, thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott.
And I should say helpyourkeiki.com is parent-facing. It's designed for parents.
Oh, okay.
And caregivers.
Okay, yeah. Great, thank you. So Scott, tell us a little bit about our Trauma-Informed Care Task Force.
Yeah,
how did that start, all that stuff?
So I'm hoping Tia will jump in, but Tia initiated the task force. Oh. And I was appointed after she moved over to the governor's office. And when it's a good segue in terms of being culturally responsive and having cultural context, because part of the function of the task force is to have community voices. We can't really be a trauma-informed state without having all of those voices at the table. And then the other part, one of the other tasks of the task force is to make recommendations to OWR.
What is OWR again?
The Office of Wellness and Resilience.
Right.
So I think Tia has really set up a nice infrastructure where the task force meets. We have what are called
permitted interaction.
Permitted interaction groups.
They call it the PIG.
Right.
PIG.
Right. And we've divided up into different PIGs so that to tackle certain kinds of issues of trauma-informed care, which a report will get sent to Tia's office. And
so Scott, a PIG, a permitted interaction group, can anyone join a PIG? Like, is it open for community to be a part of?
We can do that. And so part of it's kind of this technical thing, because there's this thing called Sunshine Law, and we can't work in work groups together unless we officially create this PIG. Mm-hmm. And then it allows us to meet outside of the task force, and then we're allowed to have conversations. But it's a very temporary group. It's not meant to go on and on and on. It's like, here's your one thing you're trying to accomplish.
Like an ad hoc committee.
Yeah, and then it disbands.
Got it.
But we can set up new ones as new issues come up. But
okay.
Yeah.
And how do they participate? Like, they just say, hey, I'm interested, and who do they contact?
Yeah, so people are able to join the task force meeting as
Like a fly on the wall.
A community meet.
Like this demon-possessed fly that keeps going around our heads.
Yeah. And
Joining our group.
yeah, and then from there, as we discussed the creation of a pig, they might show an interest in it. But, no one could have done it better than Tia to kind of set up this whole thing. It's pretty amazing.
I think he's your number one fan. And then how long does this task force last? Like, is it on a time limit or?
It is. The Ledge just put a new date out, right?
So it's actually going to morph into a kind of an advisory board for the Office of Wellness and Resilience.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good to know. And so how many members?
11.
11 members? Okay.
Officially in statute, there's 11 agencies that are members.
So when you meet, can others kind of listen in? And so if I'm not mistaken, task force, you have to kind of advertise when your meetings are, right?
Correct.
And give like a link so people can jump on.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And how often do you meet?
Once a month.
Once a month. Okay. For how long?
2 hours.
2 hours? Okay. Well, I'm sure that will hopefully, if you're interested in trauma-informed care, if you're interested in knowing what our state is doing around trauma-informed care, please jump in and listen to one of the meetings. And it should be, once again, I guess it's advertised on our website, hawaii.gov.
It's on the Hawaii State Calendar website, and it's also on the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division,
Okay.
their landing page.
Yeah, there's a link there.
Okay, great. Now, Tia, your turn. How are you, Tia? I know you've been out and about, and I know you've been going to Maui and trying to support us. Can you talk a little bit about the Office of Wellness and Resilience, and also like what are some things that's happening right now in your office?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First
Of
of all,
course.
it's nice to be here with everyone. So this office was established in statute in 2020. What year are we in? 2022, and so Session Laws 2022. It was established out of a recommendation from the Trauma Informed Care Task Force. That was one of the first recommendations that came out of the task force, and the idea was to be able to have something in place to sustain the work of the task force and implement the framework that they are creating as we speak. There's several other pieces to the legislation and the development of the office that specifically speak to the overall health and well-being of the state, addressing unmet needs and barriers as it relates to health and wellness, building resilience in communities, as well as coordinating the trauma-informed care reform efforts across the state agencies in order to better kind of scope where the overlap, where the gaps might be, and my office is kind of poised to address those pieces.
That's great. And you have a staff?
Yeah, so we have a staff. We were established in statute last session, 2022. I was appointed in December. I started in January of 2023. So we were established in statute in Governor Ige's administration. Senator Donovan De La Cruz was the introducer of the bill to create our office. It went through the legislature and was approved with 6 positions in our budget. And Governor Green came in, appointed the executive director. I started in January and was able to start to create the framework and the staffing structure for the office. And so we have 6 staff total. We have 3 project managers, and they are located, one on the Big Island, one is located in Maui, and one is located on Oahu.
Great.
With those 3 project managers, we also have a director of communications and engagement and an administrative executive assistant, and then myself.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that you're covering, the Pai'aina where it's statewide, right? Because you know how it is sometimes, because I'm a Maui girl, so sometimes Oahu gets all the attention. So awesome. And then Tia, you mentioned unmet needs. What are some of the unmet needs that you've been coming across?
So we're, this first kind of big piece of this office as we were conceptualizing it as a community through the task force in those conversations, but also in meetings that we've created since my appointment, was really looking to see how to approach, like, strategically what the unmet needs are, who identifies those, who defines those as unmet, and really kind of create the framework around listening groups and listening sessions. There were several organizations, including Hawaii Community Foundation, who just embarked on a large listening tour around wellness and resilience. And so we're building upon what they've already collected over the last couple of years, and in collaboration with some of the major family-serving, child and adult-serving agencies, looking at how to identify and address. Specifically, we're looking at, as part of our focus, is the workforce. So how do we address the workforce's ability to be well, to be balanced, to be trauma-informed, to be resilient in the sense of this work is difficult, this work is challenging. We all recognize what secondary traumatic stress does now that we've gone through COVID, and we're getting a big dose of it going through this large community trauma and the response to the Maui fires. And so the secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma of the workforce is something that we're really focusing on and addressing those unmet needs and barriers, specifically to create a balanced workforce across the lifespan. So it's not just with keiki, but it's keiki to kupuna is kind of how we're stating it. So the unmet needs being identified both by the community, the system, the directors and leaders of those systems, as well as our community partners.
All right. So I had heard that the state had a plan that anyone who gets a state contract, nonprofit, that we would have to be trauma informed as an organization to receive any state monies. Is that so? I mean, is that one of the plans moving forward?
It's not in statute right now. Okay. It's not in policy per se. Different departments have their own language around contracts. However, it is one of the goals is to utilize our office to look at policies and procedures, to create kind of to help create the state's approach in a trauma-informed way. So everything from how we engage that family or youth at the very first phone call, or at the very first face-to-face meeting, or the very first email exchange, to have people aware of what trauma is, what it does to the way in which we show up every day, how it impacts our ability to be balanced as a provider, as an employee, and from all employees from every spectrum of where people are employed throughout an organization is the goal. And so that includes language and contracts. That includes our procedures in which we go from point A to point B. It includes the way in which we engage with people. And hopefully it will include in writing the way in which we develop contract language.
I love that. I think it's really important. What about for-profit contracts? Right?
Yeah, right. I mean, there's the part of our office is kind of structured into 3 different buckets that we've kind of created over the last 6 months. One is policy and program development as it relates to trauma-informed care. Another one is training and technical assistance, which can be provided to anyone. So training around what trauma is, what trauma-informed care is, what resilience is, what the literature and the research say about how do we build resilient communities, how do we build resilience within ourselves and our families. And then really looking at the third bucket, if you will, around collecting data and doing organizational assessments, specifically as it relates to understanding that what we're doing as a state to be more trauma-informed, how is that data informing the way in which we are either utilizing our office, how we're implementing the trauma-informed care principles throughout the state, and making sure that we have data to tell us that, are we doing what we said we were going to doing? Are we doing it well? And is it making an impact?
Right.
So those are kind of the three buckets, the policy and program development, training and technical assistance, and data and assessment.
Yeah, that's great. And Hale Kipa was one of those, right? We're one of the first.
The first.
Oh, the first organization that went through the trauma-informed assessment for organization. Yeah, and we're still in it. I think we're kind of wrapping up at this point, right? So, check. Hale Kipa, trauma-informed organization.
Well, and for people who might not be aware, so Tia mentioned the principles of trauma-informed care, and I don't know how much viewers know about trauma-informed care, right? But it's really trying to change the lens away from, when you encounter a person and kind of like, what's wrong with you? What's your problem? And really flipping that to what has happened in your life? Where do you come from? What's your story, right? And it's really a powerful paradigm shift in healthcare, but really in general in life. I think the Office of Wellness and Resilience is looking at not just mental health care, but in all ways, how can we be more trauma informed? And so when she talks about those principles of trauma informed care, which I hope now I can even remember them, but a really important one is safety. So first and foremost, you just want people to feel safe.
Yeah.
Physically safe, psychologically safe, emotionally
right?
safe. That just providing that safety can go such a long way to helping somebody move forward. You also want to give people choice. I think a lot of our systems, not just healthcare, but a lot of our systems kind of foist themselves on people and don't give people a voice in the things that are going to happen to them or the care that they participate in or things like that. And so giving people a choice is a really important piece of it. I think trustworthiness is another of the principles where you want to be trustworthy, you want to follow through, you want to be transparent with what you're doing. I think when you hear these principles, it seems like, well, yeah, that goes without saying, but actually that's not the way things have been, right? And so this is a real active initiative, right, on the part of the state to say, no, moving forward, this is how we want everything to be. Another important principle is collaboration. That, we're working together. And then empowerment, which is that idea that, people have agency. They can do things for themselves. They deserve to be able to do things for themselves. And so I think when you think about those 5 principles, no matter whether you work in healthcare, whether you're just a boss in a business or at a school, you work at a school, those are principles that you can use when you're working with people that will always get you the most mileage, because it's a way to take care of people. I just learned a new word, sonder. You probably already know this. Have you heard this word, sonder?
Like
Sonder, like
Sonder. It's
Sonder about.
how do you spell?
Sonder, sonder.
Sonder.
Sonder is the realization that every random person you pass or encounter has as vivid and as complex of a life as you have. There's a word for that. And I think when I heard it, I did think of trauma-informed care, right? Because it's sort of that idea of like, right, if you understand where people are coming from, you understand people's stories, how could you not meet people with compassion?
Here in Hawaii, we hear trauma-informed care. Here in Hawaii, we call it aloha, right? It's really about how we engage with people, How do you make them feel, right? Like you said, really important. I mean, try and practice this on your kids, right? Those of you at home or your grandkids. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you, right? Say, what happened to you, right? Big difference. What's wrong with you? What happened to you? So that's kind of acknowledging that this person might be behaving or acting in a way because of something that occurred or they experience, right? That can bring about that kind of behavior.
That's right. Even if it wasn't a trauma per se, it's still, you know, everybody has a story, right? And that's how you land where you are. But it's really an effort to help us all understand one another.
Okay, now let's have an opportunity to just kind of like ask each other questions about like what's going on. Like I do have a question about Maui. Okay, like what's going on in Maui? We know the devastation that occurred, right? And I know there's so many people that's trying their best to like support the island Maui. And I, you know, Maui girl, born and raised all my life, right? Long time, I can say long time live on Maui. And just recently I moved to Oahu. But, you know, I have my shirt that I wear, right? Maui strong, pray for Maui. I don't know, the green might be having some pukas right now, but anyway, who's been active on Maui right now? And who can speak to what's going on with our mental health needs on Maui?
We'll let Tia start.
Okay.
So, you know, the response, the mental health response to Maui has been kind of going through as much as on a daily basis adjustments depending on what the needs are. And so the day after the fire, I had a conversation with our chief of staff, the governor's chief of staff, and she asked if, you know, asked to go coordinate the mental health response for Maui. And so from that point, our office has reached out and really hopefully done a good job collaborating with as many organizations as we can, and taking the lead from the Maui mental health community. And so we've been doing, for the first 5 weeks, I believe we did daily calls at 12 noon to 1 to pull providers on Maui, nonprofits, state agencies, had across the state join in. Several federal agencies joined in those calls every day, and then shifted over to every other day. And right now we're every other day doing coordination calls. And those coordination calls are really focused on getting an update from those responders, the mental health specialists that are responding every day to at first, the congregate shelters, you know, the 5 congregate shelters that were up, the War Memorial, Tavares, South Maui, which turned into Maui High, and then a couple others. Then it shifted over to the non-congregate shelters, which are what we know as Ka'anapali hotels. And so we have multiple hotel that are housing survivors and their families right now, survivor staff and survivor families in the hotels. So hotel workers that are also folks that lost their homes, as well as people directly that lost their homes in Lahaina. And so in that response, we've been coordinating with major agencies that have really come together over the last 8 weeks to daily deploy mental health specialists. So we've done daily deployments in coordination heavily with Department of Health to go out to the hotel shelters, the non-congregate shelters, and provide counseling and support. We've also been partnering with the nonprofits and the community grassroots organizations who have been going to the community parks, so Napili Park, Honokawai, S-turns, those types of the amazing community organizers that have really stood those pieces up. And so we've been providing support through this collaboration with Kaiser, with Queens, with Department of Health, and my office has just kind of been doing the overall coordination of some of those pieces. We've also been trying to assist in providing the volunteers for all of those pieces. So working on, all that entails, like names, doing outreach, sign-up sheets, deployment instructions, collaborating with Department of Health to get the name tags, get the daily briefings that are happening at the Department of Health, and the crew out at the Lahaina Comprehensive Health Center have just been unbelievably steadfast and amazing in their day in and day out, 7 days a week, day in and day out deployment, and organization on the ground. So, Heidi, Mary, Malia, John, Dr. Lividay's out there. There's a whole crew with Sandra from Queens and Dr. Swenson from there's just a crew of folks that have been doing unbelievable work on a daily basis, and we've just been honored to witness it.
Yeah, thank you for giving a shout out to those individuals because, they have been there from day one, steadfast, 7 days a week, like you said. I know many of them. So, like Julie and Mary.
They're amazing.
Dr. Livaday, exactly. So, is there any other organizations, that you want to give a shout out to, or anyone that in particular you want the community to know about?
Yeah, there's so many. I know I'm going to leave some out, but we've been doing, like I said, Queens, Kaiser, DOH, but for the community organizations, Kamehameha Schools has been huge out there. The nonprofits, and I hate to leave anybody out.
Yeah.
So, and my mind has been so frazzled lately. So, we've been working with a lot of private practitioners. So, private practitioners that not only belong to counseling groups, but also belong to nonprofits. Hale Kipa has been in a lot of our meetings. Liliuokalani Trust has been in a lot of our meetings, and been helping to coordinate Hawaii Psychological Association, National Association of Social Workers. I'm going to forget so many.
No problem,
There's
no
so
problem.
many that have been just amazing collaborators and daily.
Local ones too. Right there, little grassroots community partners showing up with food, and it's been amazing how, Hawaii Island, we come together, we take care of each other, and that's so, you don't hear about that, right? It's really about kind of what you were talking about earlier, Hale, that pilina, right? That relationships, and really how we support each other, because you never know. We live on an islands, right? We have to support each other.
And this, the state is trying to support, my office within the state is, along with the other agencies, are trying to let the county take the lead, right? So the counties in all of our meetings, the early intervention folks, the early childhood folks are heavily present, and as long as we're trying to let the county lead, and the community organizations there with the private practitioners who are volunteering. So people have been volunteering their time for the last 8 weeks. So these private practitioners that have taken time out of their private practices, the ones that have lost their practices, the ones that are working with the survivors, that they were working with survivors already, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Human Services, they're all doing, in my opinion, an amazing job making space and time, not only on their caseloads that were already full and that we were already short from COVID, but really trying to make space. University of Hawaii has been very much involved. And as of late, we've been coordinating on the weekends for cultural activities like Lomi Lomi, with Lomi Lomi practitioners coming in. Kukakuka is coming in doing mental health support, as well as working with the Maui Arts and Cultural Center to provide activities. They're there during the week at the Hyatt, and our group is coordinating with Hui Ho'omalu to bring in practitioners. We're just like us again, helping with the logistics piece. Chef Hui has been amazing in their support for the volunteers. But we're really trying to get to a place where we're able to stipend folks coming in, so everybody's not having to just everybody has you know, their own resources and bills to pay, right? So as much as people have volunteered over the last 2 months, we're really trying to make sure that we get to a point where we can stipend them and do private-public partnerships with funding to be able to provide those per diem rates or stipends, so that we can, this is a long term, I mean, this is a marathon, and so many agencies have, from across the country, have provided interest and shown interest in helping to support, but really it's going to be these people every day in Maui that have to continue, that we want to support to continue. And my staff on Maui, Keala Kaupuiki Santos, she's just
shout
been
out to Keala Kaupuiki Santos,
unbelievable in how the day-to-day, along with the other organizations, collaboration has just been. But you know, there's so much more we need to be doing. Mauna Medics has been a huge collaborator with NOI folks and Project Vision. I mean, so many agencies.
Healthy Baby, Healthy Mom.
Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies. Yeah, I mean, Aim High. There's just so many organizations that have provided support, and I know I'm missing a whole bunch, so. Sorry. You know who you are.
You know, I mean, that's the thing, right? We want to make sure that our keiki, our opio, our youth are being cared for, our ohana, and we know the impact is going to be years, right, of healing, restoration. And so it's great that everyone's coming together to do that. Now, you mentioned Dr. Livaday, who I love Dr. Livaday, who's out there as well. And one of the things that I really appreciated about her is her just her persistence in trying to get out the whole ACEs, right?
Yeah, Dr. Livaday. Dr. Gerald Livaday.
Dr. Gerald is out there? Oh, okay.
Yeah, him.
But his wife too, right?
Yes.
Fele. Oh, okay. You're talking about Fele. Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about
referencing.
Her. Oh, sorry,
Gerald.
Gerald, you too. But I was talking about your wife, Fele.
She's amazing.
But Fele, when she had come out and learned about the ACEs, right?
Yes.
So the adverse childhood experiences and how that impacts health. And as a pediatrician, how she was like, whoa. This is something that we need to pay attention to. And doing the screening now, right, in the doctor's office, when a child comes in for a health ailment, that we screen, do a trauma screening to see if there was any adverse childhood experience that could be contributing to, you know, the child's health. I thought that was amazing, and that she's kind of taken this on and been trying to get other pediatricians to also do that. Yeah, so any one of you want to explain what the adverse childhood experiences are? And for the community, many people don't know of it. Like, what is that? Like, I'm 40 years old and I had ACEs. Like, I had, you know, I'm way older than, I found out maybe when I was 40, I'm like way over that. But anyway, yeah, I realized, I'm going to disclose, I had 6 out of the 10. Yeah, and I was like, oh, no wonder. Right? That I've had some health issues and other things, right, that has occurred in my life, and I can see that in our families. So, anyone want to explain?
You want to
ACEs?
explain, Scott?
some people refer to it as social determinants of health because what happens to us socially and our social interactions and some of those things have a huge effect on not only our mental health and emotional well-being, but our physical health as well. And it carries over into the entire lifespan. Even in some cases shortening life and so on. So what happens when we're younger to us, we really want to pay attention to so that we can mitigate the negative effects of ACEs.
Right. Can someone name the 10 indicators?
So there's like 10 questions that the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, it's like a 10-set questionnaire, but it really looks at kind of these kind of 3 other buckets. It's like experiences with physical abuse, sexual abuse, witnessing violence in the household, and then proximity to people that are struggling with their own trauma, really. So witnessing violence, incarceration, parents who are divorced, but
substance use,
substance use. And the real concept about it is before the age of 18, and you're saying there's a score that comes out from answering yes to some of those questions, and every time you answer yes, it gives you a score. However, the kind of bigger take home to me is understanding that trauma impacts the way in which we show up every day. It impacts on how we, what our needs become, ways in which we cope when we get stressed out, how we view ourselves, how we view the world.
Others,
yeah. And it really, really helps to understand that there's something we can do about it. And so we can interrupt that kind of negative trajectory in the way in which we cope with stress and in the way in which we deal with what has occurred in our lifetime. And so getting help and getting support for that is very important and very helpful. It can impact the way in which our body responds to the trauma from an early age. So,
and when you think about marginalized populations, our own Native Hawaiian culture, colonization, cultural trauma, things like that, I think it really, those kinds of things like what Scott was talking about, those impact your social determinants of health, right? So if you grow up in poverty or separated from your land or separated from cultural resources or lack of transportation or growing up in a food desert where there's no fresh produce or, just all of these things, not some of those are social determinants of health, but not adverse childhood experiences. But you can see how for some of our neighbors, there's kind of a perfect storm of things, right? And so it's no wonder that they're seeing so many of these like physical health struggles, mental health struggles.
And when you think about, where you hear like this kind of resurgence of cultural pride with our Native Hawaiian community, right? And, prior to all of the colonization that you speak about, the trauma, the historical trauma, and how that has played out to now have many Native Hawaiian, our statistics, right, in our health, like we're like struggling the most in our health, education, incarceration, substance abuse, all of that.
Yes.
It was very traumatic, right, Dr. Scott?
Yeah, and Tia was talking about bringing over cultural practitioners and having more cultural activities, and that we shouldn't understate the value of that because it helps people feel like they're connected and they belong
Right.
to their communities, and that's a very healing thing.
Very healing. Yes, and I'm glad that now we're seeing that, and more funders for nonprofits are allowing that to occur, which is wonderful, right?
I also think that the the 6 principles of trauma-informed care that really talk about the big one of choice and empowerment and cultural awareness is providing people choice. So some people are going to, in this recovery and this healing process, some people are going to heal in multiple ways, right? So you're going to have, if you have 12,000 people who are now experiencing trauma, and our approach to mitigate that post-traumatic stress from really getting into our bodies and into, we want to mitigate that as much as we can, but we have to provide choice. And so formal supports is going to be one way that people will engage in and choose to engage in to heal, but there's going to be I think our responsibility is to provide choice, and so there's going to be some people will choose to engage with their churches, not this formal support. Some people will choose to engage through activities like sports, and that will be healing for them. Some people will choose to just talk to their talk to their spouse. Some people will choose to heal in the aina, right? Yeah. Getting involved in their own practices, whatever culture they come from. Every culture has different ways of healing, and so providing that choice is and allowing people to be empowered on how they choose to heal and what's going to resonate with them, I think is what the entire community can provide and do is saying, here are your choices. Like, there's formal supports, there's also informal ways and what we call natural supports that can be sometimes more effective than what we can provide. Sitting down and talking story.
Absolutely.
Healing happens everywhere.
Sometimes it's working in the aina, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Getting connected all of a sudden. Woo,
many times.
Epiphany, right? Yeah. We only have a few minutes left. So, any closing thoughts that you would like to share? And if you want to speak directly to the community, look straight at the camera as well, if you want to. It's good. So any closing thoughts? We'll start with you, Katie.
Sure. Well, I guess I would just share that I know that a lot of parents have been concerned, a lot of parents on Maui and of course statewide, because our families are so connected, have been concerned about their kids in the wake of the disaster and just worrying about talking to them or how to talk to them about it or making sure that they're okay. And really, I think from our perspective, we've just really been encouraging parents to talk to their kids in age-appropriate ways, answer the questions that they have honestly, and really just be there for them, communicate to them that, you're a person that they can talk to when they need to talk to somebody. It's so important.
It's a great message. Scott, do you have anything?
I just would like to thank our beautiful state has lived up to this message of aloha, I think, and really has pulled together to really respond, and it's tremendous. Mm-hmm. So that's all I want to say.
Mahalo.
Mahalo, yes.
And mahalo for chairing our task force. Really important to be an advisory to our Office of Wellness and Resiliency. How about you, Tia?
I think, building off of what Scott said, is, it's amazing to see how much community can do. State can only do so much. Feds can only do so much. Community can only do so much, and we need community. That's where healing happens within our interpersonal relationships really often, and to me, there's so much more we can do and so much more we need to do to understand what the needs are on a daily basis. I mean, that's what a lot of these calls are, is like on a daily basis, what are the needs that you're seeing in the community, and how can we help support any of those systemic barriers that might be in place. But really what I think is so important is please take time to take care of yourself. This is we're 2 months into this, and it's people are exhausted, and people are hurting, and the grieving process we just cannot underestimate. So to me, take time to grieve, recognize what the grieving is, take time to take care of yourself and your family, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, there's no way we're going to be able to help support and think about solutions and engage with solutions. But really just the concept of coming at everybody with compassion, and really trying to be, as we say, as trauma informed as we can in the way in which we approach people and the way what we respond people, understanding that this trauma is going to have a lasting effect, and we're really resilient as people. So
That was beautiful. Like, all of you, what a wonderful way to close this segment of Kukakuka. I want to especially mahalo all of you for all of what you're doing here in Hawaii and the support that you're giving our state. So mahalo, and our families. So I want to speak to you, community, parents, teachers. Please, kilo, observe. Please, maka'ala, be alert to see what's happening with our young people and our families, and the resources that's available. So please take the time to reach out and get the help that you need. Mahalo for joining us, and we'll see you next month on another segment of Kukakuka. Aloha.